Well, good afternoon, everybody. Episode 19 of Soul Searching, the Soul Recruitment Podcast. I'm your host, Darren Saul. I have the lovely Dani Tamati here. How are you, Dani?
I'm well, thanks, Darren. Thanks for the invite.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for coming on the show. Now, for everybody out there, today's show is going to be about fly in, fly out, people and employment in the mining and resources sectors. Now, obviously, being an IT recruiter, I know absolutely nothing about the mining and resources sectors and what it means to be a fly-in, fly-out employee or worker. So I'm fascinated to get into this detail and content with Dani and learn more about that whole side of the industry. But before I do, I'll give everybody a little rundown into who Dani is. So as a high-profile recruitment, career development, human resources, and OH&S professional, Dani's passion is people as well as employment opportunities in the mining and resources sectors. Dani has remained involved with, been employed by, and lived remotely in this thriving industry for the past 26 plus years in roles such as regional manager, mining and resources, group HR and recruitment manager, area manager, as well as branch manager and recruitment consultant for several companies, predominantly based in the Pilbara of Western Australia. She has worked on iron ore and gold mine sites, both in a fly-in, fly-out capacity and residential, which have given her a true understanding of on-site employment and the skills and qualifications necessary for such positions. Since relocating from the Pilbara in late December 2010, Dani now resides in the beautiful Perth Hills with her husband, Ricky, and her 4 children, Jake, Tane, Sienna, and Kale. In 2012, Dani established the Resources Hub, which is a nationally recognized multi-award winning consultancy which provides career, talent, and recruitment advice and support within the resources industries, including civil, construction, mining, and oil and gas. So welcome again, Dani. How are you?
Thank you. I'm great. How are you?
Well, very well, thank you. It's been a great morning. I've been pretty busy, had a nice weekend.
Nice.
So yeah, kind of getting into it for the week. But I am fascinated. You have done a hell of a lot. You have been everywhere.
Yes, but mind you, I have been doing a hell of a lot in what I now see as a lengthy time frame. So
Yeah.
I suppose to give you a bit of background, I started in the mining and resources sector when I was 21. I worked fly in, fly out. So I was 13 weeks away, 3 weeks home was my roster. And I flew to a tiny, tiny little satellite mine, really. It wasn't much there.
Yep.
Underground mine site in the Pilbara, just out of Port Hedland. So it was a flight to Port Hedland and then a 3-hour drive to site. So that was my introduction to the industry and I haven't looked back.
Love it. And now just tell us a bit more about Pilbara region, because I don't know much about it.
Look, it's once you live and once you work in that region, it's certainly, red dust gets in your veins, that's for sure. So I really do miss it. And I get a bit jealous when my husband gets to fly away every 2 weeks and get up there and for work. So I was really looking forward to going back to Paraburdoo actually in November, but unfortunately timelining and COVID, that's now been postponed until mid next year, which isn't so bad because it would be about sort of, 45 to 50 degree heat.
Wow. Oh boy.
I'm kind of looking forward to June when it would be sort of 28 to 32. So yeah.
How long to drive from Perth to Pilbara?
So when we lived in Panawanika, it was around about a 14-hour drive. And when we moved to Paraburdoo, that's further inland. So that was about a 16-hour straight through.
Wow. So it's really in the desert.
Remote. Yeah.
Really remote.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So obviously you've done lots of stuff in that, working in that industry, and then you've kind of moved and started off your own business.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about some of the highlights in that time. I'd love to kind of get into the mindset of working as a fly-in, fly-out employee, the mining and resources sectors.
Yeah, sure. So I started life as a FIFO worker and then I moved residential actually. So I lived residentially in the Pilbara for 14 years, which is where he and I had our little bambinos, which aren't little anymore. And then as you said, we relocated back to Perth. So I was really fortunate. I had a role with Drake International back in the day when we were living in Panawanika, and I was a temp with them, and then they sort of needed a recruitment consultant in town, and they said, look, we know that Jake's only 6 months old, so he's 21 now. We know he's 6 months old. We know that you still want to work up on site. Will you become a recruiter for us? And we'll have the branch in Karratha, which was 2 hours away, to support you. So that's how I got involved in recruitment.
Wow.
And then, yeah, back in 2010, we relocated to Perth and hubby got a FIFO job. So we'd never, as a family, been a FIFO family before.
Yeah.
He actually worked in the city for about 18 months before he took a role with BHP. So he was with Rio for a long time, and now he works on an 8 and 6 roster. He did do a 2 and 2 during COVID, which was interesting because he'd never done that sort of roster before. Yeah, look, FIFO is not for everybody, and I certainly don't recommend it for everybody. And I think there's certain times in your life that it's more suited than others. Like, for instance, you know, we lived residential when our kids were really young, so they went to school. They had us at home all the time. I don't know if I would want to go down that path with 4 young children under the age of 7, but, you know, with young adults and teens, I suppose it's a lot easier for me to, you know, sort of manage, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it is very different, isn't it, working as a FIFO worker? I'd love to kind of, what's life like raising a family, as you know, juggling as a FIFO worker? Must have a hell of a lot of logistics and organization.
Lots of balls in the air at all times. I just actually messaged my son and said, can you pick up the kids from school? Because, you know, he's got a license, you know, and he's at home.
Wow.
So, yeah, I suppose, like I mentioned, it's not for everyone, but if you've got a set routine and if you keep that set routine when your partner comes home, I think that's really important. You know, there's a lot of people, and I'm involved in a lot of groups and pages and stuff like that. They really struggle when their partners come home, because it kind of can disrupt the norm, or the norm that you've created on behalf of your family. Yeah. But, you know, for us, hubby and I still go out on date nights. We have dinner around the kitchen table. Jake, our eldest, now lives out of home, so he and his girlfriend come up on Sundays. Like, we've got a pretty set routine, I think, and that's really important. Obviously, we miss out on certain things like birthdays, and hubby's working away at Christmas again this year, which will be his 4th Christmas away, but that's his choice. Like he says, you know, we don't have little babies that want to wake up to Santa, you know, having been there the night before. So it's a bit of a different scenario now that they're older. But interestingly enough, we've most likely got 3 of our 4 children that, well, our eldest is almost about to finish his apprenticeship, so he will definitely either go fly in, fly out, I would imagine, initially, and then potentially residential.
Wow.
And then our second eldest is going for an interview tomorrow for a traineeship, so that will be FIFO. And our youngest, Kale, who's only 14, wants to be a diesel fitter. So as soon as he's good to go, he's out of here.
It's amazing. It's like me, you know, me listening to this, I'm like a city boy, you know, from Sydney. So me listening to all this, it's like, it's really like, wow, this is a whole new world, you know?
It is a new world. And like I said, it's not for everyone, but it's a fantastic industry to be involved in. There's so much potential out there. Interestingly enough, as a career development consultancy, a lot of our clients come in here going, oh, you know, I want to drive a dump truck. And it's like, for the love of God, there's so much more to life than that. Plus, most of them are going autonomous anyhow. So you're doing yourself out of a job. You know, so we sort of work with our clients and suggest to them alternative career pathways in the industry that they might not ever have considered before, because they just haven't been exposed to that, what that looks like.
Absolutely. And what are I mean, obviously it's very specific to the role, but what are the general hours like? Like, is it a normal work day, or how?
No. So 12 to 14 hours is pretty much your generalist hours. If you're working a construction site, so construction site rosters tend to be longer. So you're working on a 3 and 1 or a 4 and 1 or a 26 and 9 or something like that. You potentially could be working 10 hours, and then every second Sunday you have to have that day off, but that's paid as a fatigue, not a fatigue day. I can't remember the term that they use now. Like that. If you're working in a production environment, so that's obviously, you know, the mine site's gone from construction to production, then you're generally working a 12 to 13 hour shift. But, you know, interestingly enough, when we're living in the Pilbara, the closest town was 80 kilometres away. So if we didn't have accommodation in Paraburdoo, our contractors were having to stay in Tom Price, and that's like an additional hour travel put
Wow.
onto your day. So that they're very long days and very hot, very dusty,
Yeah.
dry. You know, it's certainly an interesting area to work in.
Fascinating, fascinating. And do you still get time to, have your breaks, make your phone calls, or is it just go,
Oh,
go, go the whole time?
yeah, no, you do. And look, companies, I mean, I've been involved in almost 27 years. There's a lot of initiatives that have been implemented throughout that time to give people breaks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I know when we were in Paraburdoo, and I think they're still running it now, we used to have what we called mothers club. So there'd be this whole group of mums who would put their kids into daycare, and they'd come in and they'd work like a 4 or 6 hour shift during the time that their kids would be at school and or daycare.
Yep.
And they'd do coverage of trucks so that the trucks wouldn't stop, so production was still occurring. There's lots of different, like I said, initiatives that are out there to make sure that, that iron ore is still getting ripped out of the ground and being sent to where it needs to be sent to.
Incredible. And I can imagine that the culture would be something really close knit, and you'd really get to know a lot of your peers and colleagues because you'd see them regularly all the time on similar contracts, and and you start to become friends because of where you work. So it must be a really close knit, family.
You become family. Like my kids have got surrogate aunties and uncles spread throughout, WA. Interestingly enough, I was speaking to a brand new client yesterday, and it's a Sunday, and I was at my mum's house, and she was saying to me, "Darling, you're taking a phone call on a Sunday." I go, "Mum, mine never stops. Like, can't just, not take a phone call." But this particular coordinator he is. I mentioned to him that he works in a similar industry to my husband, and he said, yeah, I know your husband. He interviewed me back in 2013. I thought, well, there you go, like 2 degrees of separation. I've never spoken to this guy before, but he obviously knows, who we are. And WA is very much like that. Like everybody knows everybody.
Fascinating.
But yeah, it is very much, my kids have got surrogate grandparents that they grew up with in Panawanica, and they will be in their life forever.
Wow. And were there, obviously before COVID time, were there lots of, often, parties and get-togethers and little functions where everybody got together regularly to catch up? And
definitely. So we have a Panawanica reunion generally every year.
Yeah.
We try and get together, and we've got a group of friends. So we moved from Panawanica to Paraburdoo, and then that's a separate group of people. But because you're all in mining, you all sort of mingle anyhow, especially if there's 2 degrees of separation amongst you. So then we might, catch up with in fact, I'm catching up with my girlfriends from Paraburdoo this weekend. We're having a girls' weekend, so I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, how cool. It sounds like such a really cool little subculture that I just had know nothing about, but sounds fascinating,
I suppose it is. I've never really considered it like that, but it's a community, it's a community within a community, really. And people become more than just friends, and when people move on, generally, you might go with them.
Yeah. And I can imagine people would stay in these roles a long time because you become part of that fiber, and it's like a family, as you say. And, you're all kind of just there together, and it's more than just a job. So you end up,
definitely
it's much more than just a job.
It's a culture, and it's amazing.
Fantastic. And obviously, so you now do a lot of work recruiting in the mining and resources sectors. You've started up your own company called the Resources Hub in 2012. Tell us more about that, and I'd love to find out more about the nuances recruiting in that sector compared to other sectors. So,
well, now it's a really interesting time with border closures. We're finding that's, limiting our talent pool. But I suppose the consultancy isn't just based on recruitment. So ideally, we want, people that are interested in the industry to have a positive experience when coming into mining.
Yep.
And having the support structure there, I think, is really important, because there are a lot of, like you said, nuances to the industry, support around families and partners and people that are away. Often mining companies and contract service companies in this industry have primarily worked with the employees and not necessarily with the families, and it's us that are left behind for those. I'm on some pages at the moment, and there's some women that haven't seen their husband since March. Because they've been away. Because of the border closures, they simply can't get back. So we I suppose we grab, and we have done since I set the business up, we've looked at it as a holistic consultancy around what rosters, what remuneration. You know, we've seen the ebbs and flows, we've seen the changes in pay rates, we've seen the changes in rosters.
Yep.
We've seen lots of changes throughout our time, and we benchmark those to give our clients a bit more clarity around what they need to work with and the parameters that they need to work within, and, you know, our advice of what's literally happening in the industry to make, you know, informed decisions within their own organisation.
And that's actually a fascinating point you mentioned before, like, you know, just dawned on me, because as a recruiter, you know, I work in a different sector, and, you know, obviously there's always consideration for the family and the partners of the potential employee. But in the mining and resourcing sector, you have to have so much support and information to help that employee make a decision, because he or she is not just making a decision for himself or herself.
No.
It's making that he or she is making that decision for the whole family.
Decision. Well, interestingly enough, when hubby got tapped on the shoulder and, you know, suggested to move across to BHP, and he'd been with Rio for 14 years, we sat down with the kids, and Jake would have been 9, Tane would have been 7, Sienna would have been 6, and Carl would have been 4.
Yeah.
And we actually had a family discussion. Look, Dad, we'll start to go fly in, fly out if you're all in agreement with this. And, you know, we need you to understand that we're not going back to the Pilbara. We're not going back home, as they used to say. I mean, they're so used to their Perth lifestyle now anyhow. I can't imagine that unless they take it upon themselves, like I said, our eldest might do. But yeah, there is a lot to consider. It's not the money, it's not just the roster, it's the whole kit and caboodle.
It's the lifestyle, the whole lifestyle.
Yeah, and that's where I think there's some amazing companies out there that get it, you know, that get it and do it really well. And there's some others that really need to, I suppose, have, what I've found is that they need to have a third party such as us come in and look at what their current scenario is, because a lot of the time employees and candidates will talk to us candidly, more so than they will to their own employer.
Definitely.
Because there is no need for them not to. You know, we're removed. Therefore, you know, they're sort of opening up to us and really telling us detailed, data-driven information that is essential for employers moving forward.
Yeah, and when you go back, so you obviously work almost like an HR consultant by proxy to the HR department. And when you go back and consult with them, do they take on board generally what you're saying?
Yeah, we're working with a client at the moment, and they're amazing to work with because they're so open-minded to what's happening. And there's a few, obviously, we've all seen huge changes this year. We've all had to revert, and, you know, most of us have had to make redundancies and things like that. We've actually personally grown in our consultancy, which is fabulous.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah, so, but, you know, working with clients like that, eyes wide open, it's just a breath of fresh air. And I think, you know, we have lots of conversations with different clients, and if they just don't get it, or they haven't quite understood the message, it's not worth us pursuing, because, you know, they're just going to do what they've always done and they're going to have the same results. And let's face it, Darren, you know, recruitment has changed so dramatically.
Oh, it's constantly changing.
20 plus years that I've been involved in it. So, I think, you know, people need to be a little bit more flexible and open to change, really.
Well, I mean, I've been in it over 20 years now, and my God, when I first started in recruitment, we have one fax in the middle of the room, and we all used to take turns faxing that resume to a client, or we'd get the courier to come and do it, and we'd walk it. You know, my God, have things changed from a technical point of view, and even from a you know, methodology point of view and a candidate shortage point of view and everything else. My God, how things have changed.
It's not, you know, to me, recruitment's not CV flicking. If somebody wants to do that, knock yourself out, you know, build your KPIs and make sure you tick every box. But for us, it's very much about, like I said, it needs to be a position suitable to the candidate, and we need to negotiate that with the client. We had a meeting this morning with 2 of our clients that we're currently got a few roles on with. And it was great because there's complete transparency across the board. You know, we're trying to do the best we can. We're trying to source the right people. I mean, the last time we actually physically placed an ad on Seek was back in 2018. So we built our work through community, referrals, all of that sort of stuff. And we've got an amazing relationship with our candidates who end up turning around and becoming our clients anyhow.
Incredible. Do you use social media heavily?
Massively. I've built this business on social media. We've got 13,000 organic people in our page, and that's since about mid to late 2013. So yeah, and then last year we created a group and we've already got 20,000 people on that. So
wow. I can only imagine that would be such a powerful force working in that sector and in that culturally driven, community driven environment and workforce.
Yeah, it's it's about know, like, and trust too, isn't it? So if I've seen a few recruitment agencies recently just pop up out of nowhere, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, you work in mining, great. Do you know what a fixed plant looks like? Have you physically seen a Liebherr crane? Do you know what I mean? Like, all of that sort of stuff is just kind of.
That's actually a really good question. I mean, do you have to have worked in the physically in the mining and resources sector to really recruit in that sector?
I think it's definitely to your advantage. So in my team, Jo has worked in construction, civils, oil and gas, mining. She's worked in Australia. She's worked in Africa. She's worked FIFO herself. Her husband's oil and gas scaffolder rigger. She knows what that takes. Hayley has a partner who works in emergency service. Our husband who works in emergency services. She came in brand new to the industry, to recruitment at the beginning of the year, and she will be very soon promoted to a recruitment consultant because she's just so good. And all my clients, one client came in here today after having a meeting with me saying, I just need to go and meet the team because they're just so awesome. They, cool. I never have to worry that site mobilisation forms are done, or, there's follow-up with certificates, or medicals are booked, or, everything kind of flows. So we're very much hands-on here. Isabel's just started with us. Lovely. So that's exciting. She comes from a career development, HR and recruitment background, a bit like me. So she's a bit of an all-rounder. So we're really looking forward to her, getting used to the industry because she's never worked in mining herself. And then I have consultants that come in to provide support around HR and OSH and that sort of thing too when we need it.
Don't have any fly-in, fly-out consultants? I'm only joking.
Can do, no.
And it sounds like there's a lot of paperwork involved as well, because there's so many ticks and checks to, and certifications to keep on.
So interestingly enough, one of the very first things that I invested in when I set the business up was a really decent, robust recruitment system, because I'd worked with the likes of Fast Track, which did my head in, and a few others. So all of our life lives in it's an all-in-one really. We run our email campaigns. We're having another breakfast on Friday, so we'll manage all of that information through our system. We've got a CRM, we've got, recruitment, the whole lot. So yeah, it kind of ties in nicely.
Oh, well, and I mean, I'd love to know, are there any particular challenges or nuances recruiting for people in that space? Are there, as opposed to others, what would you say are the key things?
There's times where clients will ask for specific inductions. So for instance, if we're mobilising electricians to BHP, they need to have BHP inductions, they need to be inducted, they need to have had site, they need to have block holder, they need to have personal isolation, all these other ones. Medicals, we do some pretty stringent medicals on people to ensure that they're fit for work. Wow. What else? Well, obviously your qualifications, but
insurances, probably that kind of thing.
Our insurances are mental, because undergrounds obviously tends to be a little bit more risky than open cart. So yeah, there's lots of different scenarios, but like I said, I've been in the industry for 27 years, so I can't imagine placing hairdressers in hairdressing salons because it's not worth it.
That's fantastic. And I mean, how has COVID affected you guys? Not so much the business, but the industry in general.
Oh, massively. So April, we basically lost all of our contract workforce, which was, pretty drastic. And it was time to, I suppose, readjust and look at what was important. And so the business we're currently in the boardroom at the moment, moved to home offices, and we managed the process through that. So we had some jobs in Africa, and we had a few jobs, perm jobs that we were working with a client in the Pilbara, which were, yeah, like I said, perm, so they weren't contract. But obviously having that huge chunk of contract workforce basically disappear overnight was pretty like, oh God, here we go again. And I'm all for reinvention. Like, I love challenge. For me, it's like, bring it on, you know, let's see where we go. So that was April, May. We came back to the office sort of end of May, and we haven't stopped since, and we've just been getting busier. But the interesting, I suppose, challenge at the moment is we have some clients who are more than prepared and understand that training and development has been lackluster during that real downturn in our industry, and that individuals have had to take it upon themselves to train and develop if they've wanted, you know, career advancement. Whereas now we're finding that clients are quite happy to have that conversation and upskill, say, light vehicle mechanics into a heavy duty diesel mechanic sort of role, obviously with the training involved. So yeah, we have been definitely affected. Pay rates are increasing, rosters are changing, you know, all of a sudden there's lurks and perks being thrown in front of anyone and everyone just for retention more so than anything, I think. So it is a real sort of game changer, but I think it will start to settle down. I can't see it settling down anytime soon, but you know, we go through these readjustments constantly. You know, mining is so cyclical. We go through ebbs and flows all the time. So when a downturn hits, all these people, you know, sort of, it's like a mass exodus out of the mining and resources sector. But then you've got this group of people that are really, really interested to become involved, and they want to give it a red hot go. So sometimes you need to look at the individual and the skills that they can bring and mold them into certain positions. I think that's really important as we grow again as an industry. Yeah,
and as you mentioned before, people come to you and they're not even sure what opportunities they might be suitable for. So it's up to you to kind of guide them a little bit.
Absolutely.
That sector.
Yeah. Definitely.
Fantastic. And you must have seen it all the ups and downs in the last 20 years. I mean, my God.
I've been through 4 downturns. By far, this one was the worst. But, you know, now all of a sudden we're in this really interesting space. I mean, we're bloody fortunate to be living in WA. You know, we're still going to pubs and clubs and acting like nothing is an issue over here, really. And we've been certainly very fortunate, because God forbid COVID gets into a mine site, and that would just change the dynamics of everything.
Definitely.
So I think we're all very mindful of that, and very, I suppose, appreciative that we have what we have.
And there must be very strong practices and precautions in place and controls to make sure that this doesn't happen.
Yeah, well, hubby goes for a COVID test every now and then, and I had to go with him once, and I just watched, and I was like, yeah, that's not actually going to happen to me unless I absolutely positively have to.
It's not very pleasant. It's not pleasant.
It's not the nicest of things from the looks of it.
Oh, wow, Dani, fantastic. And I mean, I'd love to just tell us a bit more about the Resources Hub, and, you know, if there's any, and how we can actually find you. And
Sure.
It sounds like you work globally as well. Is that right?
Yeah, we do, which is exciting. I've placed people overseas previously in my previous life, but it was really exciting to get picked up by actually an old friend who was a neighbour in Panawanika all those years ago, and said to us, look, we need these people, and can you find them? And it was a really hard gig, I must admit. It wasn't easy, but so we took that under our belt. But I suppose I worked in a very major international recruitment company, and they had several different arms to their business. And at first I was really kind of, I suppose, what's the word? I wasn't quite sure why one arm wasn't talking to the other arm and how they weren't all working together. And I'm an extremely collaborative person. Yeah. And so I had this idea one night when I was working for this major, and I just had enough. I had 5 GMs in 6 months, and I was like, you know what, if we're in the business of people, we ain't doing it right. Yeah. And so knocked that on the head and set the hub up. And I set it up just as the downturn was happening. So it was like, oh my God, what have I done? But I say to people now, I think I'm unemployable. I don't know if anybody would actually want me full time in their business.
Yeah.
So I set it up around the whole career development, recruitment, talent management model, which I saw as a way moving forward. I think you and I both agree that the agency is dead. You know, the typical recruitment agency model of you've got a contract desk, you've got a temp desk, contract temp / perm desk. That's it. It's done and dusted. We simply cannot work like that anymore. So over the years, I've created some reports, some really interesting data-driven reports around, like I said, rosters, remunerations. I started to see a bit of a spike in 2018 of the information that was being fed to us via candidates, and pay rates were starting to shift and that sort of thing. So, you know, as I mentioned to you before, being that consultative person in the industry who also has physically lived and worked in the industry too, I think is a really good point of difference. So we try and help our candidates and our clients as best we can, you know, all the time. We're open, we're transparent, and we're at the end of a phone call.
Awesome. And what's the best way to contact you? Just your website?
Website, on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're all over the shop.
Everywhere. Social media gurus. I love it.
Yeah, I love a bit of marketing. I love a bit of social media. If I wasn't in recruitment, I'd be in that. Ask Mark Pierce, he'll tell you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Mark and I have a good chat about marketing and sales and social media and all that all the time. I love it.
Yeah, he's a legend.
Well done. Well, Dani, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show and learning a little bit more about your subculture of an industry and your subculture of a lifestyle, which is fascinating to me. Like, makes me want to come and spend some time there and just see what happens.
Yeah, well, you know, do yourself a favour. When the borders open, come and have a visit.
Yeah, come and check it out.
It's amazing. I'm off to Kalgoorlie for Diggers and Dealers in a few weeks, and I'm really looking forward to that. So that's a whole nother, a whole nother subculture in itself. That's more underground than it is open cut. So different type of mining, different type of commodity. So
it's like a
got to be across it.
Absolutely, but it's been an absolute pleasure. And I always like to ask my guests at the end of the show, anything that you want to leave us in terms of any messages for the recruitment industry, messages for the mining and resources sector, anything that comes to mind?
Oh, look, as a recruiter, just, I suppose, be authentic, be yourself. Don't try and, you know, to me, KPIs are gone and dead and dusted. I think it's all about personable relationships will make you an amazing recruiter. And in the mining and resources sector, if you've always had a keen interest or you want to transition from a different industry, reach out to people who can assist you with that, because there are so many opportunities, and we're getting to the stage where, you know, we need talent, and we need talent now. And like I said before, companies are recognising that slight shift. You know, if somebody's got 70% of skills that would be suitable to a role in mining, I'm pretty certain if they don't jump on them, somebody else is going to fairly soon.
I can imagine. Like, it sounds like it's quite candidate short, like in most other sectors as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Seems to be the story of our lives lately.
I know, right? But we wouldn't have it any other way, would we, Darren?
Absolutely. It'd be too easy otherwise. It'd be too easy.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Dani. Absolute pleasure. All the audience out there, I hope you learnt something, and I hope Dani's giving you some great insight into the industry. And if you're looking to recruit in that industry, please contact Dani from the Resources Hub and her team.
Yeah.
And, everybody have a fantastic day, and we'll see you very soon for another episode. And bye for now. Thanks again, Dani.
Thanks, Darren.